Just Charizard sipping on some bourbon. Yeah. He's been on hard times. He's bearded and
you need the smoker voice now.
Hey, I'm just I've seen some better days, guys.
Charizard.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the JRPG Pursuit Podcast, a thoughtful podcast where we like to discuss our love for JRPGs, from collecting and playing them. I am one of your co-hosts, Emily, and I'm joined by...
I'm Branden.
Hey, and I'm Abdallah.
And today is our Halloween special. Yay, that's why we're dressed up.
Yeah.
Halloween.
Halloween.
Yeah.
So this should be going out, I guess, Halloween Eve? Hallows Eve?
Yeah.
How do you say
Is that?
Because I think
right?
The day before Halloween.
Because that's
Yeah,
Thursday,
yeah.
So Wednesday. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Just the day before. But of course, you can join us anytime, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I am dressed up today as Estelle Bright from the Trail series. So I brought out this cosplay again.
Yes.
You guys want to share who you're dressed up as?
I am Yu Narukami from Persona 4. And I don't have a samurai sword. I feel like that really would have sold it, but
I'm missing Estelle's
know,
pole, so it's
that's
okay.
true.
You don't own a samurai sword?
I don't. I have a friend who does. Oh, he used to.
Call yourself a weeb.
He bought it at an anime convention. I really should. But anyway, what are you? I don't know if anybody is curious.
I don't know if anyone can realize, but I'm but a humble Charizard.
Yeah. Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that guy.
Yeah, he's trying his best.
Onesie.
He's trying. It's a very large onesie. I'm burning up in this. I just want you to know
this
that.
is just another pitch to all the audio only audience on Spotify and Apple. You know, you're missing out. If you're not looking at the video, you're missing this.
Yeah,
you're missing all this.
Whatever this is, it's quite the Charizard. He's down on his luck. That's for sure.
I mean, you know, he's
a little
had a few bourbons.
Yeah,
he's hanging in there. He's had a little bit to drink.
I don't know what I'm gonna do here. Charizard. No, but seriously.
Well, to celebrate Halloween, we figured for the topic for today, we wanted to discuss RPGs that we love that we think would be suited really well as a horror type of game. Mm-hmm. So we figured we'll kind of start off the podcast by sharing our, our history with the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
And who'd like to start? Of what sort of spooky games you guys have played before?
Ooh.
I think Abdallah, why don't you go first?
Oh man, okay, that's fine. That's fine. I was gonna say Branden because Branden's like big horror buff.
That is true. He's the horror collector among us, I believe.
But we'll save the best for last, maybe.
Maybe I'll go last if I'm the biggest collector of it. Then I'll go last.
Yes.
Yes.
I love lots of horror games. So like I grew up, playing Resident Evil 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 1 and the PS1 and Silent Hill through the PS2 era and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of like, I guess, older like horror games and even to this day, like Dead Space and the Dead Space remake, I played those and all the Resident Evil, which I've been replaying the Resident Evil remakes right now. So if it just finish it up number 2 and moving on to number 3 and then getting to that sweet number 4. But I've always been a fan of, and I think there's something to say about like people who are into JRPGs that might be kind of adjacent to horror just because of the storytelling.
There's like a Venn diagram.
Yeah. Like I think it's just because the storytelling in horror games are just so similar in a way to how JRPGs kind of go in the sense of like how specific they might get, or just how like grand if they might end up being, and they're very similar in that vein. And so I have always kind of like leaned against both of those. Not so much as like spooky games always give me like it takes a while for me to get through them because I get so like freaked out and it's so intense sometimes.
Gotta take those sanity breaks.
I know.
Sanity break.
I know.
Calm the heart down.
I know.
Develop palpitations.
As we get older, that becomes increasingly important.
I
That
agree.
heart rate under control.
And it's funny because like
Yes.
horror games, as I got older, became harder to get into, just because the more stress I had in my life as I got older in age, the less stress I'd want to put myself through at the end of the day when I'm relaxing.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's
but
totally fair.
there's still, I love watching. Also, I love watching other people play horror games. It's low stakes for me, so
Sure, yeah.
I'm into that. But yeah, I think like Resident Evil, played I played the Codelco back in the day, especially if you want to look at like JRPGs that kind of have a horror theme to that. And yeah, I think for the most part, that's basically like, I played all the big hitters growing up, with friends or by myself and stuff like that, especially Fatal Frame. I think that was one of my
Fatal Frame.
I have like a very distinct memory of being in high school playing the PS2. I think Fatal Frame 2, with a bunch of friends, and just being freaked out. It was like 2 a.m. and we were like playing that game, and just like it drove us nuts. But it was so much fun. That game, just the atmosphere of that game is so intense, and the slowness of using the camera added to the effect of it too. So you're like freaking out trying to like grab the camera and just take a picture quickly to do it. So that was and plus I had like that Japanese-esque horror theme, which I was really into Japanese like horror movies at the time. So it just kind of played into that. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I feel like you two, I have the least, or not as much history when it comes to the horror genre. I just played a few like survivor horror games, like BioShock, a little bit of Resident Evil. The one on the PS2, was that 4?
Let's see. 4 was on. I think it was.
I think I played 4.
PS2.
Yes. 4.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, I played.
It was on everything.
Yeah,
it was eventually on everything.
Yeah,
that's true. But yeah, I was kind of more interested in more of the action ones with some of the creepy atmosphere, and that's what I think kind of captivated me. I was less interested in kind of the horror chase kind of games, because that always just freaked me out. I don't know. I don't really like chase scenes at all. Even like in RPGs, we have that sometimes, and I'm like, okay, we're just running away from this thing and making sure we don't get caught. So I don't know, that always just made me very anxious, and I just kind of always dreaded those scenes. So maybe that's why I didn't dive into horror as much, because I was more interested in something that was more combat heavy and less kind of stealth, or sneaking around and trying not to get eaten or something. But yeah, I feel like I have kind of missed out on so many that I probably should play more. I definitely played some more like RPGs that have more of a spooky atmosphere, like some of the SMT games that we might go into a little bit later.
Yeah.
And the ones that just have that kind of spooky atmosphere that it's kind of hard to describe sometimes, other than just saying it's just a very kind of heavy and almost anxious like atmosphere that you're walking through whenever there's like exploration parts, and you never know what's going to be around the corner.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But yeah, I guess that's all I could really describe when it comes to my history with horror, other than, of course, I watched plenty of horror movies growing up too. I like them. Oh, yeah. I never really got freaked out by them. I always just found them kind of funny. That's why I liked watching them.
Horror movies are just fun. I can't think
of any that really scared me. Like when I was a kid, I hated dolls. I couldn't watch Chucky or the R.L. Stein Slappy thing. That freaked me out. But other than that, I felt like horror movies were just kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that it's just my response, trying to, make the scary stuff more like lighthearted by laughing at it.
I think that's partially could just be your response, but also there's like a lot of overlap between comedy and horror. That's why so many like big comedians go into horror. Like it's a very like there's a similar like setup punchline or like setup scare sort of thing. That is the rhythm of it is very similar.
Yeah.
And sometimes just the costume design, it's just in some of the graphics they choose, just it isn't like the most high quality. So it's a little corny in some bits.
Yeah.
Like I always loved the corny, like 80s kind of horror stuff.
Like watching the first Evil Dead movie. The first Evil Dead movie, just at this point in time, it's just so funny to watch because it's corny.
Well, because he made that movie on like a $20 budget,
which is great. I love it. Emily, if you ever want to get like, I always found that like horror movies, the more it gets grounded in reality, the more
I can see that
causes you to kind of like stressed out or like just fear that because like, especially like Pet
I
Sematary.
can see psychological horror maybe the most that would freak me out personally.
Like it's always things that happen in horror movies that are like realistic, like, you know, Pet Sematary, when you watch that kid, like the kid go into the like those kind of things that you're just like,
which Pet Sematary? There's been so many. I feel like I've seen the corny ones.
I think the one that came out in the 90s.
Okay.
I think, or I forgot the 90s or 80s. Then there's the more recent one too that came out, which was a little bit interesting. But if you ever want to watch something that's really intense, watch Hereditary. That's
that one is one of the scariest movies I've seen. Yeah,
I have to brace myself.
It messed with me for days afterwards.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I should actually watch it.
There's a new thing that directors seem to be doing, which is like putting a scary looking person in a dark room and you can just barely see them in the shadows. That is, to me, the scariest thing. They found the scariest thing and they're now putting it on screen, and they're allowed to do that. The law lets them do that. And it's too scary, and it's so scary, and they shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Should be restricted.
Yes. They should not be allowed to do it.
You can make any horror film, just no scary, dimly lit person.
Don't let it be scary is my thing. No, I'm just kidding. I love horror. It's my probably my second genre after JRPG in terms of games. It's my favorite film genre. I love all of that stuff. My first horror game was, I think it was Silent Hill. It was definitely, it had to have been Silent Hill because I didn't play Resident Evil until later. I didn't play that until later, so it was Silent Hill, and that scared me so much, but it also was like super intriguing. Like I was very into the story, and I think you're onto something there with the horror and JRPG overlap, Abdallah.
Yeah,
because I feel like especially Japanese created horror games. I can't speak as much to Western. Although there are definitely some really good stories in Western horror, but like there's a lot of like, I don't know, similar emotional investment, I feel in those. Like, I don't know, like, so anyway, so Silent Hill 2 on PS2, and then 3 and 4, of course. And all the I played every Silent Hill game. Like I technically, I haven't played Book of Memories on Vita, but I do own it. So that, if that says something, but yeah, I love it. You mentioned Fatal Frame, like very scary, very scary. Love it. And then as far as like the RPG, like the horror RPGs, you know, Kudelka, of course, Shadow Hearts 1 and 2, played those, love those. And so like Corpse Party, you know, I know that's like debatably an RPG because it's not really, it's like an adventure game, but it was made in RPG Maker. So, you know, I'm going to let it slip by on a technicality. We're going to call it a JRPG. But
you guys can call him out in the comments below.
Please do. It really helps.
He needs it. He needs it.
Let the anger flow through you into your hands as you type. It just feeds me. It just gives me power. I love horror, and there are so few opportunities in a JRPG focused media presence that I have to talk about horror. So I'm happy to talk about horror tonight.
I know you've been talking about wanting to talk about horror, but not having
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've referenced it a few times lately.
Honestly, you should just make them. I'm sure they'll be, because we talked about that overlap of JRPG fans and horror. I think you could do it.
If anyone
could do it, I think you could do it.
Thank you. I have had some people say like, "Oh, you should really do like another channel." It's like, God, the idea of starting another channel.
No, just throw them into
like
your channel. Like honestly,
yeah, I think your channel is fine.
Yeah.
Like when you have too many channels, it gets complicated, messy.
Yeah.
If
I had employees, if this is like a business, then maybe. But no.
But it's hard to as a one person running channels. It's hard to manage multiple. Like we're running, this podcast one.
Technically, we're running 1 1/3 YouTube channels, right? So, and that's already plenty hard. So
it's plenty hard. We're bad at getting back to comments. I've noticed. We probably should.
We do read them, but
we always read them.
It's
hard to answer them as a collective.
Yes.
I think we're gonna work on that. So
yes,
we will answer, and don't worry, we are reading them. I mean, we based our last episode on a comment, so there you go.
And we're taking the suggestions too.
Exactly.
Like not just that. Like we have a whole chat thing in our Discord where we talk about the show, where we've got the ideas that everybody's sharing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we are, so we're definitely making note. Anyway, horror
stuff. Yes.
Yeah. So horror games or what are we talking about? Horror JRPGs that are.
We're talking about JRPGs we think would be perfectly suited for a horror type of game. Any sort of horror. It could be survival horror. Some of the, I don't know. What are the subgenres of horror? Maybe for those who are less familiar with the horror genre, maybe we should get a little bit more educated on this because I can't think of many myself.
Yeah. I feel like the term survival horror is just thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's like if there is. I
just thought it was more of like a combative, like we have like
you
guns
fight.
and you fight them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the action based horror where you're fighting back. There's the chase based horror where you can't fight back. Yeah, you basically are just hiding and running the whole time.
It's like a walking simulator horror game.
Kind of, yeah. So like,
stealth elements, right?
Yeah,
like Haunting Ground on the PS2.
Yeah,
like, technically, she can do this little wimpy kick, but it doesn't. Like these things she's running from are not bothered by that.
Yeah.
So it is kind of just runaway sort of horror. Okay. And Silent Hill, Resident Evil. Obviously, you have guns or weapons and fight back. So survival. So I mean, I guess
Rule of Rose too is like a runaway one, right?
I think Rule of Rose is primarily runaway.
With all the doors, and it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
I
watched a playthrough of it one day.
I did play it in high school, but I don't remember anything from it, honestly.
Some creepy children.
Yeah, lots of creepy children. So creepy children could be another genre of horror.
That's true.
Honestly.
I mean, there's a lot of creepy kids in horror.
They can be very creepy. So,
but what do you think?
There's also like monster horror too. Like
monsters,
you think of like Wolfenstein, they have some of those like mutants and things.
Yeah,
go after you.
I mean, there's like the Alien isolation game.
Oh, alien like sci-fi horror.
Sci-fi horror. Yeah.
Which is I love the Alien isolation game. I don't know if you guys played it, Branden.
No.
I've watched a little bit of playthroughs of that.
I was tempted to get it when it was on. I think Limited Friend was publishing it.
Yeah.
If they
it was like Sega, why?
If they do a VR Alien Isolation, I'm there.
Oh.
I'd be for that.
Because if I'm gonna die of a heart attack for playing a game, I want it to be like worth it. You know what I mean? Like it's gotta be
totally immersed.
I gotta be
100%.
You know? It looks very scary.
Make it like one of those isekais where you die in the game, you die in real life.
And then I wake up in...
You die in the game, you die in real life.
Have you haven't seen those?
Oh, yeah, of course.
They're a dime a dozen now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like, I don't know if there's like a clear indicator to what types of horror. I don't know. I need to look into this.
There must be some definition, but I'm sure not everyone uses them, and
I'm sure that everybody's aligned on them anyway. So
no, it sounds like there's so much overlap in the horror genre.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't make sense to classify them that way.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I think what we're trying to do is just trying to figure out like, what JRPGs might tend to trend, like might end up being a great horror game in general. It could be any kind of horror game, or like we can describe what type of
what our vision is,
what the vision looks like, but kind of taking the mechanic or the ideas of a JRPG, or what types of games that we enjoy might actually do really well in the horror area of things. And I don't know who wanted to go first on that. I think Emily.
I will.
Oh, never mind.
Branden could go ahead.
Branden.
Go right ahead.
All right. So I had a couple. The first one is Final Fantasy VII, and I only say that not to just be the big Final Fantasy VII dweeb that talks about Final Fantasy VII all the time, but I think in the remake games, Cloud's like interactions or like mental breaks where he sees Sephiroth and stuff, like there's some like legit creepy stuff that happens in those sequences. And a game where you're like being stalked by stuff like that as Cloud, and you're not able to use like the weapons that you normally use, like you're not an overpowered anime god, you know, I feel like that could be legitimately scary. And there's like, would you want
like that Xbox series that has to do with mental health? The Hell, what's it called?
What is?
Hellblade. Something like that. That would be creepy.
Yeah, true. For sure. Like, and that's got that same kind of level of AAA polish to it, and which actually like just adds to the atmosphere. It's, I think that sort of third person over the shoulder kind of adventure horror for Final Fantasy VII would be really cool. And they've already shown that they've done so many different kinds of games in that world. Like, I think that they could probably pull it off too.
Yeah,
you know?
I'd actually like to see them mix it with a little bit of what's that? The GameCube Eternal. What's the GameCube horror game? Nintendo published.
Eternal Darkness.
Eternal Darkness, where you kind of like it plays on your mental like sanity. So you make the actual person playing like it tells you like, oh, you sometimes have to move it from like. It makes you think that it's deleting your memory card information and things like that. So like using Cloud's like judgment or not understanding of like the real world of what's happening around him to kind of play tricks on the person playing would also be kind of a really cool way to.
If you are,
so fitting too.
If you're through Cloud's perspective, like we know that he's got these issues that make him see things that aren't there. So like you could really kind of work that into the gameplay in some interesting ways.
Break the fourth wall a little bit.
Going back to Eternal Darkness, say like they delete memories. Is that how that game plays?
They trick you.
Yeah.
Like
so you have a sanity meter, and the higher you're like, or like the more you lose your sanity, the more likelihood something's going to trigger, and it will like make you think something is happening, and it breaks the fourth wall a little bit. So like it'll be like, oh, like it's deleting your memory card saves, or it's doing, I don't know, Branden.
It'll like switch to be like, it looks like, oh, the TV switched to AV1 instead of
that's kind of neat.
Screen, and you're like, what? And then you snap out of it.
Yeah, elements like that in a JRPG would be so cool and unexpected. I think.
Yeah,
especially for those who haven't played that game.
I don't think it's ever been done, honestly. Maybe in some indie stuff. But
they need to do it again.
The closest
maybe
thing
it's so difficult because we have so much PC and console overlap these days with the platforms, but I feel like they could make it work.
Yeah.
Totally.
The closest thing I ever saw was Metal Gear Solid 1 when you're fighting
Psycho
Mantis, and you have to actually put your controller into port 2 to beat him.
So he can't read your mind.
Read your mind. So like that was like, it's a very like Kojima's very good at those like mind play and doing weird things.
Outside the box kind of.
He needs to make more horror games rather than his walking simulators.
he was gonna make that PT, and then they canceled it, and that broke my heart because that was gonna be the scariest freaking thing
I know
ever.
That demo was incredible. It's really
I'd like to see him take on a JRPG, like modern. JRPG.
It would be interesting. Yeah, it would be really interesting to see.
And more of a cinematic sort of perspective, which he's been doing more often now.
Yeah, I'm surprised that would be cool to see him do something like that.
I mean, that would be Kojima Unchained, because if he'll put 90 minutes worth of unbroken cutscene in an action game, imagine what he would do with a JRPG.
I'm sure people complain, but I think it'd be cool.
We would never get to touch the controller. That's fine. I'm for it. I'm with you. I'm with you here.
Mind every now and then. Yeah, more of a cinematic experience.
Like, people complained about Xenosaga.
I know.
They're like, oh, there's some cutscenes that are 25 minutes long. It's like, that's great. What are you talking about? Like,
yeah.
Shut up. Let the man cook.
I know.
Let him cook.
Let him cook. Exactly. No, I would be all for that.
Yeah. Kojima, if you're listening, and we know you are.
Yeah.
We know you're listening.
He's definitely subscribed to us.
He's subscribed. He
helped us reach 1,000 subscribers, which we meant to talk about.
Yes.
We wanted to thank everyone.
Emily. Oh, yes.
Subscribing. And we're going to hopefully have more details about memberships very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fingers crossed by next episode, because we're just about, I don't know if there's
the minimum threshold.
The threshold to be able to do
watch
it is
hours.
1,000 subscribers, and then like a certain number of watch hours.
Yeah.
So we're very close to that.
Very close.
So
we'll have more details probably the next podcast.
Yeah. If you wanted to come even sooner, then tell your friends. Actually, it won't make a difference, but still tell your friends. Tell them to subscribe.
Have them enjoy.
Yeah. And you can talk about it together and make fun of me. I don't mind. So Final Fantasy 7. That you can't make fun of that. It's too.
It's a little sad, honestly.
I know. It's like it's really depressing.
You can't make fun of it. It's just sad.
It's just
no. It's great. It's great. I love it.
I do too.
I do like how you're just kind of slouched over a little bit.
I'm getting the whole vibe for just
depressed Charizard.
Yeah, depressed Charizard.
He's just like he's down.
No,
on his luck.
do look good.
It does look good though.
He's down on his luck. Okay.
He almost went with the Pikachu one, but I'm glad he went with Charizard.
It's true.
Yeah.
I
just don't know how yellow would go with this complexion.
It doesn't work on my complexion, so
I know, it's tough. It's tricky.
The yellow on
it's
this
hard.
skin is just
Yellow's so hard.
It's gonna look weird.
It's harsh.
It'll get blown out.
Harsh.
I don't know.
I have this blonde. I have this blonde wig that I almost was gonna do Titus from, or Titus. Sorry, people. Titus from Final Fantasy X. But I couldn't pull it off. But that's super yellow hair. You know what I mean? Super yellow. And I don't know about that. What were we talking about? So Final Fantasy VII. The other series I think that would do really well in the horror space is Persona. I think Persona is already adjacent to horror. Like, it came from SMT, which you could sort of argue is more horror than a lot of JRPGs are, right? Like
the horror version of Pokemon.
Yeah, it's like you're dealing with demons and like the end of the world. It's very apocalyptic, demonic horror kind of stuff.
Yeah. And a dark atmosphere.
Very dark, yeah. So, Persona is the flashier younger sibling of SMT and gets all the attention nowadays. Yeah. But, I feel like it's already kind of started to borrow elements again from SMT. As it's gone on, it's kind of embraced the SMT-ness of it all more thoroughly. So, like, let's bring it all the way in. Like, we've already got these groups of kids. They don't have to be kids; they can be whatever. But groups of kids that are traveling into another world to, like, kind of inside people's minds, sort of, like, not literally, but kind of
like Psychonauts.
Like Psychonauts, kind of deal. But you're going into their mind palaces or, whatever. Yeah. In Persona 4. And, I think that there's just a lot of potential to make those dungeons just like super creepy, super atmospheric. Like, there's no reason that you can't still have lightheartedness. I'm not saying that Persona needs to go full grimdark or anything like that. But, it seems like it would translate really easily to
for sure.
A spookums.
I completely agree. Yeah. It's very close to just being a spookums anyways. So
well, like, you look at like Persona 3, that one is like a super dark even by like Persona standards, especially. Like, it's a very dark game.
With the guns and everything.
That
animation. When I saw that on X-Play as a kid, I was like, "This is allowed?"
I know.
I remember it being controversial. I remember it being controversial when it came out.
Yeah,
I didn't play it at the time. I didn't play it till years later. But yeah, Persona.
Awesome. Maybe someday I'll finally play them.
Maybe.
Maybe I'm enjoying Metaphor ReFantagio, so it's going to be inevitable. I'll get to them.
Oh, I didn't realize you haven't played the Persona games.
Everyone's surprised when I admit that, but yes.
Oh, okay. I mean, like honestly, like
it's such an intimidating series that I don't want to like. It's been so hyped. I'm like, I don't want to get into it and be like, eh.
Well, the one beauty of it is like you can play any of them. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
At least you don't have to like play them in order.
I plan to play 4 first. 4.
I love 4. 4 is, I think, my favorite.
I think 4 is my favorite too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be remaking it inevitably.
I know, but I feel like how it is now, the golden version, it's perfectly serviceable.
Oh, sure.
Oh, no, it's great.
And who knows when they'll have that eventual remaster.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll enjoy the remake more if you have the foundation of the original too. So
yeah, there's that.
Exactly.
Too, that aspect.
And you'll probably want to play it again anyway, so yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to replay games these days.
It is true.
Especially
we have so
100-hour plus games. Like,
yeah, I'm not looking forward to when ReFantagio has their inevitable remake or additional stuff that you have to replay from the beginning.
Like a royal version.
Yeah.
I hope they really don't do that. They just add DLC.
That's I'm pretty sure that's their business plan, their model now.
It is.
Yeah.
They've
I don't think they're going to get rid of that anytime soon.
I think I'm actually going to wait on Metaphor because Atlas snubbed me from getting any of the stuff that they sent out to a bunch of content creators. They wouldn't take my calls. So you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to buy the game one time when you put out the definitive version. That's what you get. I'm going to wait.
Oh man, Branden is coming in hot. I'm
already turning into a freaking diva.
Well, you have Square Enix at your beck
and
call.
That's
true.
I have a good relationship with Square Enix. That's good. That's the one I prefer anyway. So, yeah, you heard me, Atlas. That's the one I prefer.
Ooh, now you're gonna make them jealous. They might reach out to you. They might reach out.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, it depends on what if that pushing that button is works on them. We'll see. I guess no,
probably not.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm of course gonna get Metaphor. Everybody is just like talking it up, and I can't.
I think it's living up to the hype.
I can't stay off the hype train. So
yeah, I started it. I need to get back into it. I was out for last week, so I'm excited to play a little bit tonight at some point. Because that game, it's just beautiful.
It's so good.
Yeah,
beautiful in many ways.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's continue with our picks so we don't go into too many tangents. Abdallah, do you want to introduce your pick?
It's the night of tangents.
RPG.
But yes,
I think tangents are fun, but
no,
you can only talk for so long.
It's the podcast of tangents. What are you talking about?
The Lord of Tangents. Anyways, as a drunken Charizard, I'm just kidding. But yes, in the vein of Charizard. Oh man, this guy's going. Yeah, bring him back over here a little bit.
He's drooping a little bit.
A little bit droopy.
So I figured I'd go down the Pokemon angle with this, and it's necessarily like part of the Pokemon brand. So like, if you look at like the idea of Pokemon Snap with the camera, and I kind of referenced Fatal Frame earlier on in this in the podcast, and so I thought about it. I'm like, okay, like what if they were to, within the Pokemon world, created more of like a Fatal Frame-esque like horror type of game, where you have like a, the Pokemon can be there can be like that extreme, because like, I mean, you look at Pokemon, like if you look at realistic Pokemon that people draw online, like
those could be creepy.
Those can be real creepy. And so like you can create this whole like, there's a whole sect of creepy Pokemon type thing. And even
like the cute ones can be creepy in a way.
Exactly. And then you have like the whole idea of like the, when you played the original Pokemon, I think Blue and Red and whatnot, there's I forgot wherever Ghastly was, it was like that old house that was kind of like haunted of sorts.
Oh, and also they have that
is it Rosetown?
That tower.
I think it was in Rosetown, yeah.
The grave.
That's what I'm thinking.
The grave site. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yes. It's been so long since I played those games. But like if you were to take like kind of like a whole in the vein of like kind of making your way, you create a story around it, but like
up the tower.
But you have this like camera to kind of like use against these Pokemon.
And Pokemon, like some of it, like when you're walking around, sometimes they have those traps where you like could fall into things.
Yeah.
So that could be kind of neat.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like go up, you know, a tower or something, and you get stuck in some rooms that you don't want to go into. Yeah.
They could have the traps be like super gruesome, like
exactly
like Tomb Raider reboot style death scenes. You know, just go all out.
Yeah,
just go all out.
And also just Pokemon eating people.
Oh, of course,
I know.
You need to see that.
And like,
oh man,
it's like interesting because if you look at like a lot of, especially those like in the Pokemon that do show up in that tower, or like kind of like the ghostly type Pokemon, if you look at their actual like descriptions of how they came to be, some of them are horrifying. Like
Cubones, like
have
you read the one for Cubone? It's so sad.
I know.
Yeah.
There's some of them that are just like, they're terrifying, like, or like just really sad, or something.
It's tragic and sad, and yeah.
So like, I
the
mean,
perfect premise for a horror game, honestly.
Exactly. So I think
need some tragedy, and then that, you know, springs up horror from that.
Exactly. So Game Freak, if you're watching, which we know you are,
of course you are.
Of course you are. I know that, you know, with the Switch 2 coming out, you know, inevitably.
And with all your leaks, you need some new ideas.
Exactly.
So we are here to deliver them.
You know,
give you some advice. The Pokemon relationships with people thing, that's not gonna fly well with your
Probably
audience.
Don't want to go that route.
I would
the horror route's better.
Against it.
If you're gonna go horror adult, I think is going to be like the right angle you need to go.
Okay.
Yeah, let's stick to violence, guys. Can we just stick to violence, please?
Yeah.
All right. Got to be nasty about everything. Come on.
I mean, you know, if it exists, there's something about it. So that's
I know.
We can't do anything about that. But
I wouldn't have expected it from Game Freak. Is just the thing. You know what I mean?
It's in their name.
I know it's out there.
in their name.
The official lore. Yes, it's a little disturbing for games that are always E for everyone.
Not the weird Pokemon /fic, official /fic, notwithstanding. Don't you love it when creators slip like really messed up things into stuff for like that's ostensibly for kids, like the Pokemon stuff, like
they did that all the time as when we were kids, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
As the adult humor that parents are supposed to get, but I don't know how that flew.
The censor's taking a nap, and it's just like, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, there's plenty of
some
things.
ways it's kind of funny, but some of it's a little bit.
That's just fun when creators do that, and sometimes they do it in a creepy way, and that's why we were talking about it. So
yes,
exactly. And so I think like for me, like, you know, looking at it from a Pokemon perspective, I think that would be a fun thing to do. And I just want to see that. I want to see it.
We want to see more from Pokemon, and this is the more.
Yeah. Like give me something fun. Give me something original. Like that's interesting to bring us back to the Pokemon world.
And that's not broken on day one and never fixed.
Yes.
Ideally, right? I mean, if we're just throwing out wishes here, why not?
I know. I mean, I'm just a broken Charizard.
It's not much to ask for there. It's like the minimum requirement.
The barest of bare minimums, please and thank you.
But yeah, I guess I'll switch gears and talk about my pick. So I really enjoy sci-fi horror. A lot of times, I don't know, when you watch a lot of sci-fi movies, you don't think of it as horror, but honestly, a lot of it is. From multiple standpoints. And one of the sci-fi RPGs that's very beloved in the JRPG space is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. And I just think that story could have also been in a horror sort of setting. And I think exploring more of those type of elements in a horror genre that's maybe more narrative focused would be really cool. And if you have the vanillaware like beautiful graphics and character design thrown in there. And I do like the RTS sort of gameplay. That would be kind of cool too. But I don't know. Do you guys have any favorites when it comes to sci-fi horror that you think would maybe 13 Sentinels could kind of settle in?
Like emulate?
Yeah, emulate.
You know, for some reason, what's coming to mind is like the movie Event Horizon.
I was thinking that too.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like there's something to that sort of cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of a game. Like, well, I guess a game that would be like that is Dead Space.
Like that. That'd be new.
Dead Space is very similar to that.
Dead Space is stole a lot from Event Horizon.
Yeah.
In a fun way. But yeah, like I think
something like a survival horror.
Something like a survival horror
yeah.
where you are controlling, because I mean you could still do the same sort of setup, right? Where you're controlling multiple people over the story.
That's true.
But you're just going from that different perspective, and rather than kind of a visual novel adventure game.
Yeah, instead of the 2D plane, you can make it 3D. That'd be kind of cool.
Make over the shoulder kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw some combat in there. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of the RTS stuff. Like you have bigger battles where you incorporate that. I think that could work. Yeah.
Yeah, have there been RTS stuff in a horror game? I don't think there have been.
I mean, nothing mainstream.
Or even like a bullet hell kind of thing. I don't know. I don't think so.
The closest thing you can get to
genre
bullet hell is
hybrids.
Like Doom, like the really like weird Doom mods where you get like a bunch of bullets coming at you. It's kind of horror-esque, but like I'm sure there has to be something that exists in the indie world that's like.
Are we saying just an RTS horror game?
RTS.
Yeah. Do they exist?
Okay.
Do they exist?
You know what?
Part of me wants to Google it because we are able to do that.
We can.
We have the ability. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's in terms of like RTS style horror.
Yeah. But also just adapting, I think, more of the hybrid stuff. I feel like we need more of that. I feel like hybrid stuff always has such creativity towards it. And it's like a refreshing take on both genres.
I agree.
Oh, I also agree. Sorry, I was looking for I saw some people suggest like They Are Billions as one, but I think these are again more like in the indie space.
Yeah. So other people and developers are like, oh, we should have this. So it goes out to indie first, of course.
There's a niche for it.
There's a niche. Okay.
But yeah, nobody has taken on the mantle on one of the big publishers yet. Doesn't sound like so.
Yeah, but I think also just incorporating more horror games that have more of a twist. I think like 13 Sentinels would be cool because I do feel, so I'm still very naive in the horror game genre, but I do feel like a lot of the stories are pretty straightforward. There might be some twists that maybe there's some psychological kind of thing that happens or some backstory that you figure out, but kind of fewer twists than maybe 13 Sentinels had for their core story.
Certainly less than 13 Sentinels because that was just like that was like a pretzel factory. It was so twisty. I mean,
but I wonder if there's something to horror. You want simplicity let's make it scary and more real than something like 13 Sentinels, which is so complicated, but feels a little less real, and because of that, maybe
some of it I think comes down to runtime. So your average horror game is 8 to 12 hours, maybe 15 hours on the outside.
Really short.
So you're talking like a pretty short, and the vast majority of the most horror game experiences is gameplay. So like maybe there's story happening while you play, but if you're talking cutscenes and things like that, non-interactive stuff, like it's a minority of the playtime. So
different from a JRPG, which is
so
minimum 50 hours.
Right, it's pretty different. So, and part of me is like, is that why there haven't been that many horror JRPGs? Is it hard to translate that kind of tension to a longer experience? Yeah. And I think you could do it.
Well, we've seen it with some games like SMT. Again, I think that's a horror game.
I would say so too. And like Shadow Hearts has some horror elements. Kudelka has some horror elements.
Yeah.
I think part of it is just taking care to establish a rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Like you build tension and then you release the tension.
And people's, I think, attention spans, like they can't be scared for that long of a period, maybe.
Yeah, you gotta have down times in between, and even like
that's why
good horror
movies,
games do that too.
They're not usually longer than 2 hours. I want to say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of the new elevated horror movies are very long, but that's a whole different story. But no, you're right. Like typically, like a slasher movie, 90 minutes max.
You can only handle so much of those.
If it's like all tension all the time, but that's like for a JRPG, you have to have the building tension, and then you need to release the tension, and you need to let it be released for a while. That's why that's part of the reason why I was thinking Persona would be a good one, because you have your focused elements where you're in the palaces or whatever, where that could be your horror experience, and then everything that happens in the outside world is just, you know, normal stuff that happens to normal people. So like you have that kind of built in, actually.
Yeah, it would remind me like kind of like an 80s horror, like an 80s kids horror type movie, where it kind of like reminds you of like kind of, you look at like It or things like that, where you have this like a sequence of events where the kids are like out trying to find something or doing something in like outside of like the horror part of it, and then they fall into like a place where like it's like that's where it starts to dive into like the true like terror of things, and they kind of just goes back and forth from those bits, kind of like a Goonies on steroids. Yeah,
Goonies on bath salts.
That's actually a better way to put it. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we talked about a lot of cool elements that JRPGs could take on to maybe transcend or translate into a horror sort of game. And we also talked about some of our favorites and other cool tangents. Do you guys have any other games you wanted to think should be highlighted or would be cool as a horror genre spin?
The only other thing, kind of in the same vein of Final Fantasy VII, is Xenogears.
Okay.
But like not all of Xenogears. I would say you'd have to take a very specific place of Xenogears. Just in the idea of like there's a lot of like psychological play in Xenogears that has to do with like maybe personalities and things like that are not always like
dealing with
I don't want to get into spoilers just in case anyone hasn't played it, but
I still need to finish it.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of psychological aspects that goes into like kind of the psyches and things like that could kind of be you can take those portions and turn and flush them out into more of like a horror-esque type game. So like kind of in the same vein of Final Fantasy VII.
Well, it's supposed to be Final Fantasy VII originally, right?
It's true.
It was pitched as as Final Fantasy.
They said it was too dark.
Too dark.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then Final Fantasy VII was made.
Horror.
Final Fantasy VII was originally going to be like Parasite Eve, which is a horror RPG that we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that.
True.
Yeah. So Final Fantasy VII was originally going to be about a detective in New York and all this crazy stuff happening. And then they were like, wait a minute, that sounds silly to make a Final Fantasy game like that. And they didn't. But they made Parasite Eve, which is a cool, like, you know, kind of sort of genre bending. I don't know. I mean, it's an RPG for sure.
Yeah.
The combat's turn-based and, you know, it's random battles and stuff. So like it's got every element that you would even naysayers would have a hard time saying it's not.
It's true.
JRPG. But it's very different. It's like a cinematic kind of game. It was their first big like game that was focused on cinematics and stuff back in the 32-bit era. So
yeah, I have that game. I love that.
I have that game too. I know that the sequels went in a more like just straight up action direction. Yeah. But the original was very like, and it was like pretty scary too. Like I remember playing it as a kid and being like, oh, okay, this is like a little bit gory, a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Monsters, people spontaneously combusting. Never a fan of that. Wouldn't want that to happen, you know?
No, exactly.
I mean, I'm saying that to Charizard. That's probably insulting.
It is. It is what it is.
I'm sorry. I was insensitive of me. Look at how mad he looks.
It's just angry.
His little face.
It's just angry.
We should dress up more often.
Yeah.
We'll have to
you guys should give us suggestions of costumes that you'd like to see us wear.
Can you give me a suggestion that will work with the beard? Because
Same
I
here.
don't want to shave it because it takes so long to grow back and it looks so dumb until it does.
Yeah.
So if you can give me suggestions of a character in a JRPG especially that has like kind of a reddish blonde weird mix of colored beard. That
honestly, what you can do is just do any JRPG character, but just do like the rugged version.
The grizzled version.
The grizzled version.
Of that character. Yeah. I could have that as a fallback.
You could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'll have to do the same thing too. Just
oh yeah.
It's just like I never want to shave it.
No, I can't.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it. So I'm just like a bearded Charizard right now. It's really weird.
I used to hate like upkeep, like when I had to shave on a regular basis to keep a, I hated it. I hated it so much.
Awful.
So this is like far less work. This is far less work just to like let it grow in. Is this a JRPG podcast? What are we talking about?
We're talking about shaving beards. Grooming.
We moved into our beard care segment. I just didn't announce it.
So if any sponsors,
sponsored by,
if any sponsors,
sponsored by Harry's. No, nobody's sponsoring this crap. You kidding me? Nobody wants to sponsor this. Although we're very open to the possibility.
If you want to.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So I think like we talked about a lot of cool topics, and how are we on time? I feel like maybe we should start wrapping it up and saving maybe some of it for future episodes if you guys so desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got, we're just about at time, so we can start wrapping things up.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So we'd all love to hear what you guys think of horror-esque JRPGs and which JRPG you would like to see transformed into some sort of horror game, and describe what that would be. And I guess we'll go around and share our socials and where you can find us out on the web. So we'll start with Branden.
I am Just the Gems on YouTube, and Bluesky now is Just the Gems. Ooh. And then on Instagram and X, I'm _ Just the Gems.
Awesome.
Abdallah?
You can find me on both the Twitter and the Bluesky at Abdallah998.
Great. And I'm Emily, and you can find me at Orbalology on YouTube and other social media places, including Bluesky, since apparently we're all promoting Bluesky now.
We're all on Bluesky now.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The podcast has a Bluesky account too, by the way.
We haven't used it.
We haven't really used it yet, but it's there.
Much.
So
it's there.
We're ready. We're ready
we'll transition if necessary.
Yeah.
For the exodus, if and when it fully comes. I was saying, like, somebody that I follow on Twitter was like, "Oh, everybody always says they're going to leave to Bluesky, and then they always come back." And I'm like, that's true to an extent, but like every time there's been some big dumb thing at Twitter, I've moved more over. Like the first time it happened, I created a Bluesky. The next time I started posting. This time I cross post just about everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to cross post more too.
I hadn't done that before. So it's like, I am still on Twitter, but like I am making more and more steps towards not being there someday. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
though.
It's a slow process.
The feed there is just so much nicer, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It's a nicer vibe.
It's a lot more. It's more targeted to.
It is.
Yeah.
To what I'm interested in.
I'm not being contaminated by other things that I don't have an interest in.
Yeah.
It's easier to follow the people you want to follow, and then you can create feeds of your own that are like, instead of the stupid Nazi for you stuff, it's like you can just put together a feed of the stuff you want. That seems like what a cool idea, stuff I want to look at.
You'd think it'd be simple.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens to social media the next year or so. I feel like we're in a time of change, but we'll see.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
It actually happens.
But no matter what, we'll be somewhere. So
we'll be somewhere
you'll find
on
us.
the web. Yeah. So we wanted to, again, thank you guys for tuning in if you've made it this far. And be sure to leave a comment down below, again, of any horror-like games or JRPGs you'd like to see turned into a horror game. And if you're not going to comment on YouTube, you can also email us, which is our email. Branden.
It's jrpgpursuit@gmail.com.
Perfect. And we do read our emails too. So if you have any questions or just feedback, we'll love to hear it.
Yes. And thank you to the people who have emailed, because I know we don't talk about that as much on here, but I think I've responded to people for the most part that have emailed. So we really appreciate that. It's great to hear from you.
Yeah.
We love hearing that.
Thank you all for that.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And again, we want to also appreciate you guys for subscribing and letting us hit the 1K milestone.
Yeah.
And it's
Very
only
cool.
up from here.
Awesome. So
fingers crossed.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And we hope you all have a wonderful Halloween celebration this year. And whenever else you're listening to this, a wonderful day or evening.
Don't eat too much candy, or do.
No.
It's up to you.
Don't fight it. Don't fight it.
Don't fight it.
Look at me.
Also...
Look at me.
Be your true authentic self when it comes to candy.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Just be your true authentic
This
self.
is the time to indulge.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nobody's
if
going to
there's
judge
any
you
time
right
out of
now.
the year, indulge.
This is no judgment Charizard. signing off.
I'll be eating those Reese's peanut butter cups myself, as I cannot resist those. But
why did No Judgment Charizard send me?
I can't. I'm dying here.
All right, bye.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah,
Take care,
bye,
everyone.
everyone.